What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and in this video we are going to be talking about the unspoken rules of PvP etiquette in Elden Ring.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
Now, to mirror Barbossa's statements, these are more guidelines than actual rules, because at the end of the day, the FromSoft police aren't going to show up at your house with dual curved swords and beat you to death if you don't follow him, but adhering to stuff like this helps promote a healthier PvP scene in the game and ensures that there is fun PvP for years to come. So in particular, we are primarily going to be talking about duels, as in the duelists for Old Finger. We're going to be touching on invasions a little bit later, but those are a separate topic for the most part. Now, obviously, most of you know me as a more PvE guy. I make walkthroughs, I make build videos, stuff like that. So before doing this, I made sure to touch base with a bunch of very prominent PvPers in the community, Scott Jun, Ouroboros, Peeve, Prod, and basically came to a consensus after talking with all of them before I brought this information to you. So the first thing I want to talk about is duels in particular. Now, duels involve either putting down your red sign or just using the finger remedy. When you do this, you're going to see a bunch of red signs all over the place, and these are all people that are looking for duels. These are one-on-one fights that are generally honorable, and that is the majority of what we're talking about in this video. Now, the number one rule when it comes to duels is no red flask healing. Our Flasks of Crimson Tears, we don't use those in duels. It doesn't matter that you both have them, it's not something that we do. Back in the day, Invaders didn't have access to flasks for duels like this, so for the longest time now, people just don't heal in duels. I was very egregious at breaking this rule myself back in Dark Souls 2 before I knew any better. One way to help demonstrate this, especially to new players, is when you go into a duel, the first thing you do before you fight, just chug your flasks, show that you're empty. This demonstrates to the other player, like, hey, we're not drinking these during the duel, I don't have any. Hopefully you don't either. But that is the general rule of thumb. Now, as for stuff like Blessing of the Erd Tree, or the actual heal incantation, or items that are going to regenerate health over time, that is all kosher in duels, because if it's part of your build, it's okay. But actually using the red flask, that is something that is frowned upon in the dueling scene for the game. Moving on, blue flasks and Wondrous physic. These two categories are considered okay. Blue flasks because without them, mages are not going to be able to function. Obviously, you can punish it. If you see a mage drinking, you don't need to just sit and be like, go ahead, bro, get your mana back. But blue flasks are not frowned upon. They are perfectly fine to use. Wondrous flasks, on the other hand, these are a little bit of a hotter topic. The main reason being that there are some crazy things you can put in Wondrous flasks. So let's talk about those briefly. Now, in particular, the one that I want to call attention to is right here, the Crimson Crystal tier, because putting two of these together gives you a full heal in your flask. And to be honest, if you use that, people aren't going to be able to tell the difference between that and a red flask. So in general, I would not suggest using these in PvP at all. You know, it's just going to make me think that you healed, and then I'm just going to try to attack you and kill you. Now, something like the HP boost, or the HP over time, or the restore HP when near death, stuff like that's all fine, because it's just considered a flask effect. Now, there are some flask effects that in particular tend to be banned in the tournament scene, stuff like the infinite poise, stuff like the infinite FP. In invasions, this is, you know, do whatever you want, but in duels in particular, using those tend to be frowned upon only because your build is revolving around the first 10 seconds trying to maximize and get that kill. And most players, if they see that, they're just going to avoid you for 10 seconds until your buffs wear off, and then they're going to continue the fight. So it just kind of, you know, it adds this like weird interruption into the duels where you're just running for 10 seconds trying to survive before the fight actually commences. So you can use them. Just know that if you ever try to enter a like structured PvP prize-based tournament, something that another creator is hosting, that stuff is likely going to be banned. And in general, it tends to be frowned upon in duels, but there is no hard thing saying, hey, you can't use this. Moving on from there, though, the next thing I'd like to talk about, and this is another topic that's hotly debated, is buffs. Now, the thing with buffs in Elden Ring and in Souls games in particular is that buffs are part of your build. You had to invest stats to achieve these buffs, you had to sacrifice spell slots to get access to these buffs, and therefore you should allow your opponent to buff before a fight. However, there are limitations to this. In the previous games, a lot of players went by like a one and done or a two and done type rule, And I mean, every now and again, I'll see people, they'll put up Golden Vow and Barrier of Gold and Blessing of the Erd Tree, and they're going to take the Boiled Crab, and then they're going to use their Flask of Wondrous Physic, and then they're going to get their weapon buff off with their Simpuku or whatever it is, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is becoming overkill. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if we are doing a duel, I'm looking for a good fight. If you're going to put up 6, 7 buffs and set your character up to instant kill me, there is a point where I am going to attack you. So yes, you should let your opponent buff. At the same time, people that are using buffs, keep in mind that there's a limit. People aren't going to sit around and let you put up 6 or 7 different buffs before they attack you. Personally, my general rule of thumb is after 2, if you want to get any more, you need to get those off in the middle of the fight. That's kind of how I tend to go by. Some people will allow them all. Some people will just straight rush buffs. I mean, I've seen people out here that have names that just say no buffs. So just keep in mind, this is more hotly debated. You should let it happen, but be mindful of how many you're using. And on that note, there's also law of regression. I've seen some people complain that law of regression shouldn't be allowed in duels because it negates buffs. Well, similar to how you invested stats to get those buffs, somebody else could invest stats to get law of regression. So if law of regression is used on a duel and you lose all of your buffs, I mean, that's just how it is. You know, that is fair play. Moving on from there, the next thing we're going to talk about is gestures. Now, gestures should always be used to initiate PvP. Hey. And this is, like I said, this is more particular to duels, but the idea is that when you're starting a duel, you do a friendly gesture to indicate, hey, I'm aware that you're there. They gesture back, that way you've acknowledged each other, and then you're ready to begin. So casual greeting, that's a good one. The reverential bow, that's another good one. I see some people, they like going for the edgier stuff like Hoslow's Oath or the By My Sword. Any friendly gesture will work. On top of that, people tend to bow at the end of fights. Personally, usually fights are done and I'm just grabbing the next sign. But you know, and because this is a gentleman's agreement and an honorable duel, you should at least, at the very minimum, greet the person before the fight, and if you want, go ahead and bow after. Now, on top of that, you should be mindful of the gestures you're using, because we don't have voice comm in this game. Gestures are our primary form of communication, and because of that, there are some gestures that have negative connotations to them. Stuff like point down. Point down is literally telling somebody, like, get on the ground, you're trash. Bravo, the very sarcastic clap, like, oh wow, you did so good, but you still lost. And you can use these, obviously. I mean, I use them plenty, but keep in mind the context, because, you know, if I walk into a duel and I'm like, oh, hey, and then that person starts walking towards me and they're starting with the point down, I'm just going to run up and hit you with R1. Like, you open a duel with a point down, you're acting like an asshole and I'm just going to hit you. So be mindful of what you're doing. Gestures are how we communicate, and, you know, just keep that in mind. Now, moving on from there, we're going to talk about where things get a little bit trickier. And in particular, I want to start by talking about fight clubs. Now, the idea behind a fight club is I summon a red in, or I summon in a furled finger, and then the idea is I would pop Taunter's Tongue, and I would start picking up red signs. Because without using the Taunter's Tongue, you can't pick up red signs after you already have a cooperator. After you already have a red in the game, you need the Taunter's Tongue to pick up additional cooperators. But because we have a limit of 4 people, and we can't just pull multiple people in. I mean, you can, but, you know, people are going to be trying to invade as well because you had to enable a Taunter's Tongue. Invaders may come into the fight club, and in a fight club, you can't expect an invader to abide by the rules. Now, in general, the rules for a fight club are going to be similar to a duel. So the idea is you gesture first, you allow a couple buffs, you know, no healing flasks in that duel, in that fight club. A couple things to help with this. If you are trying to host a fight club, change your character name. We can freely change our character name at the mirror back at Roundtable Hold. Just make your character name Fight Club or something like that. Because if I invade and it says you have invaded the world of Fight Club, immediately I'm going to go, okay, cool. This is going to be a series of fights, and I'm not trying to fight 3 different people by myself. Another thing, and this one I'm not 100% about, but the rainbow stones, these used to be very, very popular for denoting fight clubs. The idea is you would just throw the stones on out, and you basically create an arena. So, you know, I'd go in a circle around this. And the idea is, hey, look, now there's a zone. We're going to fight. I mean, well, I would have gone all the way around. But the idea is, hey, I've made a circle with these stones. We're going to fight in it. In the testing I've done with Tox, it seems after somebody leaves a world and comes back, and possibly even with invaders, they may not even be able to see the stones upon coming into the world. I don't know if this is just something with the netcode as the way it is right now, or whether or not this is something that'll get patched. But those used to be used to denote, like, hey, this is going to be a fight club. We've created an arena here. Another important thing is if you're hosting a fight club, you should be off in the distance. You should be over here using a moat that, you know, it's clear that I'm not a threat. I'm resting on the ground, or standing on top of a branch, or standing on top of a roof, somewhere where it's clear I am not engaged in this fight. You know, my summon is already in the ring. I'm hoping you decide to fight this person and I'm just here to watch. But once again, because you have to use the Taunter's Tongue to really get these fight clubs going, keep in mind that invaders may come in and they may not understand. I mean, at the end of the day, an invader is an invader. They don't have to play by the rules of a duelist. So, food for thought. Moving on from there, though, let's talk about invasions, because invasions are a much hotter topic. In general, there are no rules to invasions. However, there are a couple of guidelines that I think are good to share just to kind of disseminate some information into the community. The first being that when you're an invader, you don't want to attack other invaders. So, I mean, you know, it says it right there. The objective is to defeat the host of fingers. And nothing is worse than when you invade and you're fighting a host and his buddy, and then a second invader comes in and you're like, great, I have a friend. And then that invader instead attacks you like some kind of mad dog. Nobody likes that. There's nothing to say you can't do it, but keep in mind that when you invade, unless it's somebody using a Taunter's Tongue, by default, every invasion is going to be a 2v1 or it's going to be a 3v1. So if you're in an invasion and a second invader comes in along, that's the closest thing you're going to have to a partner that can help you in that invasion. So just in general, you should not attack other invaders. They are also trying to kill the host. They are on you're on the same team. You're playing for the same team. You shouldn't be hitting each other. And obviously, no one likes a rabid dog that just goes around and attacks anything that moves. So I would not suggest doing that. In terms of being an invader, in invasions, if I invade here and I see that there's a fight club happening, you know, I can decide what I want to do. If I want to act like a dick and just attack the host, it's an invasion at the end of the day. Now, in general, if I invade and I see a host that's chilling and I see a summon that's approaching me and it's clear the summon wants to fight, I'm going to try and hit him with a casual greeting. If they reciprocate with a gesture, I'm going to treat that encounter like a duel. I'm not going to chuck flasks during it. I'm going to very much play that out the same way I would if I picked up a red sign. But once again, that's just a personal choice. Invasions are invasions. There's, you know, if somebody kicked open the door to your home and bust on in, you're not going to bow to them first. Like, no, it's a home invasion. You're going to fight for your life, you know? So keep in mind, if you invade a world and people are showing courtesy, it's nice to reciprocate that courtesy, but you don't necessarily have to. And at the same time, you should expect no courtesy ever as an invader. If you invade into a world and it's one dude spamming Moonveil and another dude spamming Rivers of Blood and another guy throwing lightning bolts, I mean, it's an invasion. That's it. You know, ganks are not fun. Nobody likes dealing with ganks, but sometimes they happen in the game, and you know, it is what it is. On that note, let's talk about ganks, because ganks are generally unsavory activity, but I see a lot of people get confused about what ganks are. So, you know, people will invade, they'll die to two people, and they'll be like, oh, I was ganked. This was a gank. Not everything is a gank. Now, let's say I'm playing with two buddies and we're going through Stormveil Castle. We've killed everything. We're going up to the boss, and about halfway over to this location, somebody invades. We kill that guy, and then we get back to doing the PvE. That's not a gank. We're just doing jolly cooperation, and by default, we're flagged for invasions. People are coming and we're killing them. Now, if me and my same buddies get up here to the boss fog, and all the enemies in the world are dead, and we're just sitting here waiting to gangbang invaders that come in because we think we're going to punish them or something, that is a gank. That is maidenless behavior. You shouldn't do it. I mean, I know some people have, like, their egos are hurt or something because an invader attacked them, and so now they feel like they need to 3v1 to punish the invaders. Don't do that stuff. It's maidenless behavior, and at the end of the day, it just kind of makes you a douchebag. Now, on the note of stuff that you should not do in PvP, right now the hottest thing is people that are going AFK. Stuff like getting up here, or they get over here on the roof next to Academy Gate Town, and then they pop the furled finger, or excuse me, they pop the Taunter's Tongue, and then invaders come in and they think they're safe because they're in an AFK zone. On that note, this is actually a bannable offense. Every time you start the game, as you can see right here, you make agreements to not do stuff like this. This is considered a repeated act of disruptive behavior. Enough people report you for doing the AFK thing, you can get your account quarantined, suspended, you can get your save data deleted. I wouldn't suggest doing it. If you feel like being a douchebag and doing stuff like that, then that's going to be on you, but just putting it out there, TOS says they will ban you for doing stuff like that. So I would not suggest doing it. And while there is no rule against ganking, I heard via word of mouth that Miyazaki is actually working on the Bloodborne remaster, and he said they're tracking ganks in the game, and every time that you engage in a 3v1 gank on an invader, they actually push back the Bloodborne 4K remaster another day. So right now it's like all the way out in like 2024. You know, I don't know when we're gonna finally get it, because people just have a hard on for ganks, but you know, just put it out there, man. You know, I personally would love to see it in 4K, but you know, people just keep acting up. What can you do? Anyway, before we wrap up, the one final thing I want to say is, at the end of the day, these are all unspoken rules. These are things that the community has kind of decided on over an extended period of time throughout the lifetime of the Souls games, and not everybody knows this stuff. So if you go into a duel and somebody is drinking their flask, you know, maybe they just didn't know. I wouldn't suggest getting immediately upset with somebody and, like, you know, cursing them out and raging because somebody did something that you understand that's etiquette that they did not. At the end of the day, that's the hope of this video, is to spread this information out into the community and hope that people kind of implement some of this stuff in their online play. Because even people that hate invaders, like, honestly, PvP in these games is a lot of fun. The more you practice, the better it gets, and you know, it's just super enjoyable because there's really no other game that has PvP like this. So either way, that's going to wrap it up for me. I'm sure the comments are going to be an absolute shit show with people arguing over what's correct and what isn't correct, but like I said, this is why I touched base with a bunch of other creators before I put the video out there. So I'm wrapping up here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time.